In November of 2011, a search committee was appointed by Marcia Waxman, who was, at the time, of course, president of the congregation. Marcia assembled and chaired a group of 12 congregants, 8 of whom were members of the board, and the mission, as Marcia wrote to the congregation somewhat later, was to find a rabbi who would be right for Emanu-El, a rabbi who would be a visionary and a scholar, one who was a thoughtful preacher and teacher, and who could inspire and engage us. It was to find a rabbi whom we could trust to guide us in continuing to make Emanu-El an important part of our lives and the lives of our families, while still being a leader of the larger Jewish and civic communities. The first 6 months of the search committee were spent in an introspective exercise, writing a job description, which could articulate in some detail the qualities we sought and our expectations for the type of person who could help achieve our goals. Once that document was written, it was circulated widely by the Central Council of American Rabbis. It was circulated directly through personal contacts of board members. It was circulated to rabbis we knew by reputation and to some extent by word of mouth. This resulted in over 30 applications from rabbis around the country and Europe who submitted resumes and personal statements. Each of these resumes and statements was evaluated by each member of the search committee, and after much discussion, roughly a third of that initial pool was chosen to be interviewed by phone by the committee. There were a series of telephone interviews, and following these interviews, 5 of those rabbis, each with the most impressive of credentials, was invited for in-person interviews in New York. At those interviews, the candidates met with the search committee, clergy, senior staff, members of the board of trustees who were not on the search committee, and following those visits, 4 candidates were visited in their home congregations at least twice by the search committee to observe multiple services and also to meet the candidates' families. Finalists of that process were invited back yet again to meet with the search committee and the board and members of the clergy and staff. The process was exhaustive, and the search committee and Marcia are to be thanked and congratulated. The result of all this effort was that in March of this year, the search committee recommended to the board, and the board unanimously voted to nominate Rabbi Joshua M. Davidson to be the next senior rabbi of Temple Emanu-El. The choice of Rabbi Davidson happily fulfills the search committee's stated mission. He is a scholar, he is a visionary rabbi, he is a thoughtful preacher and teacher, and he will inspire and engage us. He can be trusted to guide us as we keep Temple Emanu-El an important part of our lives and our families' lives. He is alert to Emanu-El's traditional role as a leader in the wider Jewish and civic community, and importantly, he understands and respects our traditions, but has the scope and vision to take us forward to new chapters in our future. On top of all that, he's got a pretty good sense of humor. Since March, I've had the opportunity to work with Rabbi Davidson as we've gone through sort of the mechanics of transition and to start as he formulates his plans and recommendations for his future. And so I can tell you from very personal experience, this is the right man for this job. The choice was inspired. We're very lucky. Marcia, I think it would be appropriate if you made the nomination of our next senior rabbi.
It is an honor and my pleasure to ask the congregation to move the motion to approve the recommendation of Rabbi Joshua M. Davidson to be our senior rabbi of Congregation Emanu-El of the city of New York.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion? I then call for a vote. All those in favor of the nomination of Joshua Davidson, please say aye. Are there any opposed? Unanimously carried. Thank you. And now, if I may call on Dr. Posner to make some remarks.
Isn't this only one of the things that makes Temple Emanu-El so unique and so wonderful and such a pleasure? Beloved members of the congregation, it is with a most delighted and very happy heart that I address you at this annual meeting, the last such meeting that I will now attend. How many people have just heard those words and have become envious of me? Raise your hand. Come you may, and will always be appreciated. I've always known that life was finite, and deep in the recesses of my heart has always been the desire that I would see the day when I could spend more time with Syl first and foremost, and then, of course, with my children and now our grandchildren. This is truly one of the happiest days of my life, and I am so happy to have lived to have seen this. From the first time that I wrote to you about my decision to retire, I referred to the metaphor of Moses and his 40-year tenure as a Jewish leader. It was with full heart and with utmost confidence when Moses transferred the mantle of leadership and the legacy of the tradition to his Mimale Makom, to the one who would take this place, and the name of that person was Joshua. And so it is that as I employed the metaphor of Moses 2 years ago, so do I employ the metaphor of Joshua. And thank God we now have our very own Joshua. I know that you will be with me in wishing him, his wife Mia, and his darling children all of the happiness and the strength and the mazel for a fruitful and wonderful and meaningful rabbinate for him and for all of us. May he be strong and of good courage, and through his leadership, may Temple Emanu-El and all of us go from strength to strength and from blessing to blessing. Love to you all. Thanks so much. Thanks for everything.
Now I'd like to ask Rabbi Davidson to address us.
Dear John, dear David, thank you for those beautiful words of introduction. John, I am thrilled to be your partner and have so enjoyed how that partnership has begun. David, I am honored and humbled to have been chosen by the search committee, nominated by the Board of Trustees, and elected by the congregation to follow in your footsteps. What makes this congregation so special to so many of its members, what makes it feel like home to them, is you and the love people have for you because they know the love you feel for them. The rabbi's most precious role in congregational life is that of pastor and friend. And that, David, is what you are for them and what you will always be. To learn from you will be my very great joy. Our name, Emanu-El, means God is with us. This week's Sidra, Parashat Shalach Lecha, tells the story of how the Israelites, at the threshold of the Promised Land, seem to forget that God is with them. Doubting God's protection, they dispatch 12 scouts into the land to bring back a forecast of what the future will hold if they choose to enter. You know the tale. 2 of the scouts bring back a hopeful report. The land flows with milk and honey, they say. Its bounty is extraordinary, the future ripe with promise. But the other 10 spies, while acknowledging the land's beauty and fertility, see only the obstacles that lie ahead, the fortified cities and the giants that dwell therein. The optimists try to buoy the people's courage, to reassure them that if they have faith in God and in the future, all will be well. Let us by all means go forward, they urge, for we shall surely overcome. But the people refuse to listen. One of the optimists was named Joshua. They stoned him. It shouldn't happen on Fifth Avenue. I know that leading the Jewish people isn't easy, especially today. The disquieting trends in American Jewish life, unchecked assimilation and secularization, increasing ambivalence toward Israel, dwindling affiliation rates, widespread Jewish illiteracy, all place a constant burden on synagogues to prove their relevance. And yet, while it would be easy to look at that landscape and despair, its soil has also sprouted some of the richest creativity the Jewish community has ever known in art, in music, in learning, in prayer, in community activism. Opportunities all blossoming right here in this temple. Congregation Emanu-El of the city of New York is aptly named. Historically, the city's Jewish and non-Jewish communities alike have viewed this synagogue as Manhattan's central Jewish address. Now, together in partnership, building on Emanu-El's myriad successes, its educational and cultural programs, worship unique in elegance and beauty, and an unmatched commitment to Tikkun Olam, you and I will nurture a future that honors that historic past. Emanu-El will remain a central hub in the lives of its members and become a magnet for the enormous numbers of disconnected, uninspired Jews around us. We will embody a Judaism engaged with the critical issues of our time and a Judaism that emboldens us to face with faith the challenges present in our own lives. The biblical tale of the Israelite scouts addresses us as a community, and it calls to us as individuals with our own hopes and aspirations. As the scouts were invited to taste the sweetness of the future's promise and the fruit of the land, so we too are invited to dream of a promised land we call tomorrow. The story of the spies is the story of us all, writes Rabbi Lawrence Hoffman. Before we buy a new home, we may scout out the neighborhood. Before a job interview, we may surreptitiously saunter through the halls, imagining what it would be like to work there. I imagined what it would be like to work here, to be the senior rabbi of Temple Emanu-El before my first interview. I knew it would be wonderful. But how could I ever have imagined I would be welcomed the way you have welcomed me? In a very short time, I have grown so fond of the clergy, the staff, and the many temple members I have met, and of your extraordinary leaders. No words could convey the depth of my thanks to them, especially to Temple President John Stryker and Search Committee Chair Marcia Waxman and those she led. I know that the years ahead will be full of joy for me, for my wife, Cantor Mia Davidson, and for our children, Lena and Michaela, as we join this wonderful temple family. I hope they will be years of great excitement for you too. You have entrusted me tonight with the opportunity to lead you. I will not disappoint you. As long as I have wanted to be a rabbi, I have wanted to be a congregational rabbi, to serve a temple family. A congregational rabbi must be many things: a teacher, a visionary, a goad, and at times a nudge. But at his or her core, a congregational rabbi is foremost a pastor and friend to his people, one who celebrates with them their joys, who comforts them during their sorrows, who offers counsel when he can and always listens, one who respects his congregants as individuals striving to create opportunities for Jewish meaning in a world which often leaves little time for such sacred endeavors. To be a congregational rabbi is to know one's people, to support them, to challenge them, and to love them. Over my 16 years in the rabbinate, I have cherished precious relationships with my congregants, for whom I strive to be present every day. And so I will try to be for you. If we learn from the story of the spies that when we look to the future, it is right to be hopeful, we also learn that when dreams come true, it is right to be grateful. And I am so very, very grateful. Thank you very much.